Sorry about your...
Cool, yeah, thanks for joining us, everyone. So I found out that Mare and Raigan, Metanet Software from Toronto, we're going to be in New York for an NYU conference this weekend. I didn't go to it, but a few people here went to it called Practice, and I was like, well, if you're going to be in town, let's do something about it, especially because, show of hands, how many of you know about the N series of video games? Okay, so most of the people here. Just as a quick recap though, for people who don't, they just released a game called N++ for PS4 this summer. But what's really fascinating to me is that it's actually kind of the third game in a series of games which we were showing. The original one, N, done in Flash, is that correct? And then some of the cabinets there, and N+ over there, and that was 2010? 8, sorry.
It's supposed to be 7, but we failed through.
I can relate, yeah.
Yeah, well, it was like the end of the year.
And that was Xbox 360, but also DS and the PSP.
Those versions were
Right, and so here's N++. So actually they've been working on this series, or at least this vision, for 11 years, which I find incredibly interesting and ambitious. And so what we wanted to do was have just kind of a shortish live conversation, kind of talking about what that means and how the game has evolved over all these years, and what it means to do this like crazy 11-year project, or if you guys even think about it in those terms. So there's a lot to discuss here. We also have a special guest with me, super psyched that Nick Suttner, lives in the Bay Area, but flew out for the weekend and a little bit of New York touring. Nick works at Sony in, not San Mateo, but, oh, it is in San Mateo, okay, in the Bay Area. And so I know Nick well, so I'm Doug Wilson. I've also done PS4 development, so Nick was my representative at Sony. But Nick has also been a big champion of N++ and really helped bring that to PlayStation 4 this summer. I'll let him say a little bit more after that with his history. And but anyway, I thought since he's maybe even more of an expert than me, would have the two of us would kind of ask Mare and Raigan questions.
Nick's like the fifth Beatle.
So that's the story here. Do you want to say anything else about? Well, I'll add that Nick reviewed N+ for 1UP. When it was kind of a bigger gaming publication.
Real quick. That was sort of fun because, I was working at 1UP in EGM at the time, and I was excited to champion like cool smaller games and loved N+. And then when I met you guys, I think at one of our Sony parties years later, you were like, "Oh, we liked your review. We have it like hung up on our wall, and if we ever make another one, we're gonna like fix a few of the things you mentioned." And then I just kept talking to you guys and became friends, and then kept talking, and then eventually you were like, "Oh, I think we're actually gonna do another one." And really cool to sort of see that whole thing through from N+, which actually looking at going back to it now and playing it here is still super incredible. And I wasn't sure, I haven't played it in a few years, but it actually still feels really good and is actually easier than I thought, like jumping back and forth, although I know you guys are much happier sort of where it's at now.
Let me start. So we'll do a little bit back and forth, and then we'll take questions from the audience and rip you guys in as well to ask questions. Can we start, before we get into the nitty-gritty of some of these questions, maybe start with an overview, just briefly, of the history. So N starts in 2003, 2004?
Yeah, well, I mean, we actually, to be really brief, but we were living in this house with 6 other students, and one of our friends introduced us to Flash, and it was this easy way of, because we were doing programming, but we didn't have any easy way of getting pictures and sound up. And so we started using that, and then we made platformer engines for several years, but never a game. So at the start of 2004, there was this Flash Games contest where we're making a game for this, and then we made N, and it didn't even get the finals. Actually, the game that won was Starsky and Hutch Pinball, which is really depressing. So we were like, okay, whatever. We'll just put it on the internet and email our friends and tell them about it. And then it spread over a couple years, and we kept doing updates because people would write to ask for features, and then someone at Microsoft really liked N, And so they got touched, and then we did N plus that way. And then, like Nick said, and like in between, we've been working on like a few other prototypes and like other games. So it hasn't been like 11, it's been like maybe 5 or 6 years of actual development with like gaps in between each one.
One question on that, like when you're working on those other prototypes, at the time, did you feel like you were sort of done with N and on to the next thing, or was it sort of inevitably going to come back and revisit it and keep going with the series?
Well, I think there were always things that we wanted to fix or add or basically make better. So we were always kind of thinking about what can we do to make this a bit, closer to what we initially thought it should be. Because it was already, like, N is great, but it's definitely more of a sketch. Like when you compare it to N+, or especially to N++, it's very much like a first draft, and these ones are more refined. So we were working on other things because we knew we wanted to get some distance from N and that series, but we knew we were going to come back to it.
I think right after N+, there was like a year or two where we were like, because we were so burnt out on it.
Yeah.
But then after, like I think we were talking with you, that got us thinking about it more and stuff. But so there was a period where it was dead to us because we were so burnt out.
Very true.
But it's just fun to make levels. I think that's the main thing that kept, like, it's this fun little creative, like, noodling on guitar layers.
When you say that N was a sketch, did you say this was more or less the vision you always had in your mind from 2004 and you were slowly getting, or did this kind of vision evolve more over the years as you were getting deeper into N?
I guess it's a mix. Like, in terms of the aesthetics of it, this is what we wanted to do. The graphic designers we worked with, the first people we worked with for this are the people that we based N on, but we didn't really know what we were doing. We were just kind of aping stuff, and but they didn't actually work out. But we had 2 or 3 graphic design books in 2004 that we were like using as reference. So the two graphic designers that worked on N++ are 2 of the 3 books were theirs, kind of thing. But I mean, all like the new enemies and stuff, that for sure is new. That we like that stuff. I mean, the Toggle Mind and Evil Ninjas are things that we actually came up with during N+, but just didn't add or didn't like. We didn't really think it would work, or we didn't have time, or whatever. But so it's sort of a mix. But like in terms of just like the way that this is. The look of it especially, and like the feel of it was like, we very much wanted this. Like at the time we couldn't get even 60 frames a second in Flash, 40 was the best we could do, so we had to cut a few corners that way and stuff, but.
So I guess, and Nick should also join in. What I'm kind of interested in thinking about and talking about and discussing for everyone is kind of how the game evolved over time. So kind of what exactly did you add and what's changed in different versions? So obviously there's aesthetics, both in the menu and the graphics, and we can talk about that. But I also mean like in the game system itself, the physics of it, the jumping. You mentioned kind of enemies in N++. And I figure that in case anyone wants to demonstrate anything, we have the N+ Xbox 360 over there, and N++ and the PS4 over there. I guess I want to preface this. I don't know how easy it'll be to explain to everyone, but I'm interested in how N is different than other platformers. So compare N to Mario or a Super Meat Boy or something. We were just talking about this earlier. I feel like N has this real weight to it. Like the game feels more physicsy in that it's kind of about the momentum. It kind of feels a little floaty at first. It's like less fast or direct than a Mario. But once you end up learning and intuiting this physics system, you pull off all sorts of like interesting jumps. And so it feels more physicsy then. Is that somehow fair to say? Or
Yeah, I think so. I mean, one thing is Elastomania was a game that we really liked. And that's I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's sort of like a 2D Trials. It's like an earlier Trials, and it's all spring physics, and it has a lot of inertia and weight. And I think it really is like, that's what Mare was saying in her talk. It's like it's more like you're steering a vehicle. You don't have this direct control of your character like in Mario. You're just more sort of applying forces. And so there's this weird indirection to it. And it actually is literally floaty because of the way that we didn't know how you do variable height jumps. Like the way that Mario does it, we've learned. synths is like they have a parabola and they just kind of, when you let go, shortcut you to the down phase. But the way we did variable height jumps was, while the jump button is down, gravity is reduced. So it's like literally floaty. Because I mean, there's like 2 or 3 ways of making it so that when you hold the jump button, you jump higher. But that was the way we came up with it. And it definitely feels very different, but we really liked how, and like you said, it enables this weird freedom and expressiveness where it's like a lot more dynamic and like you just get a lot more range, a lot more dynamic range in terms of velocity than in Mario, where you're pretty fixed in terms of the envelope of your velocity.
Also, the collision shape is a circle, and that's something that a lot of platformers don't really do. They're usually a box, and it's just pixel based, but N++, I guess, and all of the N+ is that too, right? Anyway, everything is a lot smoother because you move in fractions of a pixel. So, you know, it just means that you have access to a broader range of movement and you are way more precise about it. So we tuned the rest of the systems like gravity and just the simulation speed so that it feels a bit more slow-mo. You can actually, you know, you have time to use that precision. You can be as precise as you want to be, which is, I think, maybe related to why it's a ninja also, because we're like, yeah, ninjas can, you know, stop on a dime and then turn around, and it is a bit floaty, but we still feel like you can pull off these amazing moves once you kind of, it's about momentum and conservation of momentum, and there's a whole, like, once you get that feel for it, it feels really fluid and you're kind of flying around the levels instead of just kind of stopping and starting. We really love that.
Sort of crouching tiger type of floatiness.
Yeah, right. It's a good something actually a few weeks ago I tweeted and said that in N++ I have a better idea whether a fall will kill me than I do in real life, which is like totally true. If I was like standing on a bridge looking down, I'd be like, no, I don't know. But like now I have this like intuitive sense of what will kill me in the game, and like it is, once you realize where that line is, it really makes sense. I think a lot more than other games. And I'm curious how you guys came to drawing those thresholds and where you did, like, because it's very precise, especially the angle. Like if you hit a slope at like 45 degrees, you die. If you hit it at almost any other degrees, you don't. But like, how do you sort of draw those lines of where things kill you and where they don't? Like, is that just iteration over the 11 years?
Honestly, a lot of the tuning is pretty arbitrary because we made the original in like 6 weeks. So I think the player control was like 1 week where we just sat down and like did a bunch of stuff. And that specific idea we just stole straight from Quake. Because like, I mean, it's different. It works differently in Quake, but the idea in Quake is when you hit a surface, the angle of the surface, if it's right on, it deducts more health. We didn't have health, so we picked a threshold that was, it's like roughly half of the screen. And it just mostly, because we only had one screen, it was a way of making the player more limited, so they sort of, you could do more with the space. It wasn't this wide open thing. And it also forced wall sliding. It's something that we just tried, and then we were like, oh, actually, this makes, there's all this interesting level design stuff that falls out of it.
Right.
But I mean, the initial impulse was just like, well, we have this stuff here, like we have your velocity and the surface normal, we should do something with it. And it is the hardest thing to explain. It's super, it's just like with the inertia, and it's probably the worst thing in the game for...
Just like an example of what I was playing earlier, which I sort of hate, but only because I played it for like all the gold, it took me forever. This is just like an example here where you have to like get the inertia of that initial run right, and to like even be able to get up there and do everything else. And I think that's actually pretty hard if you're first starting, but this is like not a super helpful.
Yeah, it's super. You're making it look easy, but yeah, for sure, people tend to stumble right on...
Like,
Right, he could have easily died on that fall.
Oh.
And what's if you haven't played this, what's a little hard to intuit, all those, especially the ramps, kind of increase your vertical momentum in a special way that you're trying to chain together the momentum so you don't lose the momentum and actually get high enough on those chain jumps.
Right, which is something that is quite different from a lot of platforms, that you have to chain things together like that. And so, like Nick was saying, if you kind of mess it up in the beginning, your first action affects later ones, which is difficult to get.
Right.
That's part of what I guess feels so satisfying. So close.
So you kind of quickly come up with some of this stuff and end. How much? So obviously you've added enemies and new menus and different kind of style. How much have like the variables of the physics system changed since N? Because it seems like most of the general rules are actually the same as n.
Yeah.
But have you been tweaking that since, and if so, why? Like,
N plus is actually all different because like the thing about N++ is that it's more of a straight port of, we would prototype everything in Flash and give it to Sean and he would translate it. Whereas with N+, Nick just sort of re-implemented everything from scratch to be in the same ballpark. But there are certain fundamental things in N+, like the collision, the way collision's handled is totally different. So even though the character controller logic is the same, it feels way different because like the low-level collision queries are a bit different. In terms of what changed, like, we tweaked a bunch of little things. In terms of like the player control, we didn't tweak it for N++ specifically, but we made a new version, a new free version of the web, like N version 2. And so for that, we had to go from 40 hertz to 60 hertz, which you can't make it equivalent. So we ended up kind of fudging things a bit and changing things a bit there. And then, I mean, I don't think we changed many of the thresholds. I mean, honestly, what ended up happening is like a lot of the tuning is a bit arbitrary, but then we just we compensate for that with level design. Because it's like you can just sort of pick, that's what we learned anyways, like you can pick parameters that are just in the right ballpark, but then it's all about you figure out the spacing of stuff. Like the spacing relates to whatever those parameters are to make it feel like it works. That it wouldn't work if you space stuff differently. But I mean, one of the things we changed is like those blue enemies, or the big ones especially, we made them like 1 or 2 pixels smaller in terms of collision size. And that's actually something we did for a few of the enemies, is right near, like, I mean, I think about a year before we were done, it was just a bit too hard, and we were like, okay, let's just try shrinking everything just a bit. And it was nice because it actually opened up new routes, where before you could almost squeeze through, and now you actually could squeeze through. I think that's like probably the biggest difference, like in terms of like the most fundamental thing is that you have a bit more leeway in N++, and so it's a bit easier.
Yeah, I was just gonna add, we made some changes to input buffering too.
Oh yeah,
for the same reason, which like it just makes jumps and like your precise timing slightly easier. So it's just like the game is still super challenging, but it's just a little bit less frustrating. And we think that was a pretty good, it's more fun.
for the crowd, can you expand on input buffering as opposed to, and like do other platformer games like do something similar, or just like expand a little bit?
You wanna detail?
Okay, we've heard, like, I think, we don't actually know.
Yeah.
I don't think that they do for some reason. I mean, I know Towerfall does, and it's like some games do. Sorry, the idea about input buffering is just essentially, it's like, I think the term is from fighting games, but it's that if you use a very literal interpretation of the game code, then you have to execute your inputs in an exact frame, which means you have like 0.016 of a second, which is not a big enough window for humans. Like, so like actually there were fans in the original that can pull off 1 frame stuff. But so what we did was we added 5 frames before and after. So if you're in the air, you're not on the ground, and you press jump, and at any time 5 frames from then you hit the ground, then you'll jump. And similarly, if you run off the edge of something, but then within 5 frames of being on the ground, press jump, it considers it as if you were still on the ground. And it means that you have you have 0.16, like you have like almost a 20th of a second, I don't know what that, like you have between a 10th and a 20th of a second of leeway. And it's enough so that it still feels precise. Like it's not obviously wrong, you don't obviously jump off of midair, but it's wide enough that almost everyone can execute it reliably. And it just, like, it really opens stuff up, because there are all kinds of expert tricks in the original that we couldn't even execute, but that experts would use to do their routes that relied on these 1 frame things. And so the biggest thing that input buffering did was it opened up all those tricks for everyone. Now it's really easy to do a corner jump because you just have to be near, you don't have to be on the exact frame.
You did not do input buffering in N+.
No, and I mean you could actually, it's like, oh sorry.
In my experience, I think pretty much all platforms do it. I just don't think they're as liberal as you guys.
Yeah.
I think 2 or 3 frames is more common.
It's possible. Like I only know that people have told us like that they really wish everyone did it as much as we did, because like, I mean, honestly, what we did it for, the main thing we were trying to solve with it, we didn't even think about the corner jumping initially, was that in N and N+, there was this huge problem of wall jumping. Because like the way that wall jumping works is, if you want to jump away from the wall, you have to press away. But then as soon as you press away, you're off the wall and you're not touching the wall, and you can't jump off it anymore. And Meat Boy fixes this in a way that I really don't like by sticking you to the wall and ignoring your input for like a fraction of a second. So even if you're pressing away, you're locked onto the wall. And so we were trying to figure out like, okay, what can we do? Because it's something we even make a mistake with. Because essentially it means that when you want to jump off the wall, you have to kind of be a robot about it and press jump and then press over. Instead of pressing both simultaneously, you have to do it in an order or else you'll screw up. And input buffering just makes it so that it doesn't matter what order you press the buttons in. As long as you press them near simultaneously, you do the wall jump. So like, it was mostly just to solve that, and it really makes it a lot more reliable. And because it's like something that everyone struggles with. That made I think it made it a lot more of a niche game than it needed to be, kind of thing. So it was just to make it a lot easier for people, non-robots.
So you want to maybe show one or two of the enemies that are new in N++? Like you said, those evil ninjas are new in N++.
No, but all this.
In the intro, there's definitely evil ninjas. You guys remember which?
Oh wait, yes, yeah, perfect. Up one. Wait, left.
It's like a trivia contest for your own game. Like, which level is named this?
Right. This game has like what 2,000 plus levels. It's not that's like pre-made levels. You can also make your own level and share user-generated levels. So there's a lot of levels in this game.
Yeah, I think there are at least 5,000 levels in the user level database right now, which is pretty amazing. But there are 2,600-ish in the game,
Right.
and that includes like multiplayer as well. But so
This is interesting here actually too, because you guys basically have a coming up. I guess it's 25 or 100 level tutorial. And that's so which is really interesting. You can just based on the names of the levels, you learn every like little tip and trick. Like by the time you're done with that, you pretty much know how to do it.
yeah, we
And it's
really
like, go do it.
tried to do that this time.
Oh, yeah, here
and
we
really
go.
teach people. Okay, so the evil ninjas are from a parallel dimension. They're clones of you, and they do everything that you did 2 seconds after you did it. Yeah, it's very hard to play on this. So you have to keep moving, or they will catch up and kill you. And as you can see, you kind of have to determine, like, sometimes where you have to remember where you were a few seconds ago, or just be really good. Like in a simple-ish level like this, you can just rely on your reflexes. But when things get way more complicated down the road, in later levels, you really have to remember what you did, and kind of be anticipating where these evil ninjas are going to go. So
There could be like 7 of them, right?
It could
maybe
be.
infinite.
Oh, sorry.
Some levels are like 50. I mean.
I guess I'm thinking you can only think so many seconds.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
You can remember what you did like a little bit ago, but beyond that, you're like, I have no idea. Might as well be just
exactly.
something else.
And so, like at a point, you're right. Like you just have to kind of react to them. But we really loved how they sort of let you change the level. So it's something that you interact with and that reacts to what you did. And so every time you go back through a level, it's a little bit different because of your actions, and you can see that in the evil ninjas that we just love the way levels can be shaped over time, and how you as the player, like we as designers make the levels, that's cool. You play with, you bring your own personality to them as you play, but this is a way for you to bring something else to it and sort of be part of a conversation about level design and like playing the game, rather than just like, we make something, you play it, and that's pretty much all there is to it.
Doug and I were playing co-op last night for a few hours. There was one level where we were both creating our own clones as we like crisscross each other.
Yeah.
So, like you're saying, it's like we have to think about what we're doing and what the other person's doing, and what you guys are intending. So there's like a lot of forces at work that we're trying to like work our way through.
I think that one's called Crisscrossy Road. And I mean, one thing with the evil ninja is that since we've heard that there's a purple ninja in Mario Galaxy that does the same thing, I just want to say we stole it from Cursor Times 10 that was shown at the Experimental Gameplay Workshop in 2008. That's where we did not steal it from Mario, we stole it from Cursor Times 10. Because Mare has been trying to, she wanted an evil ninja in N+, and I was like, we need AI to get the ninja to chase you and stuff. And then, because I'm stupid. And then when we were watching Curse of Time Stand, she's like, just do it like that. Like, that's what we should do. It would work perfectly to just record your previous, and it's like this amazing thing because since you have so much control over yourself, there's all this leeway, but it's also still really hard because like Nick was saying, you cannot really remember. You're so focused on the now and the future that remembering what you did even 6 or 8 seconds in the past is like near impossible.
What's interesting for me hearing you talk about this and all the enemies, so was enemies like an explicit focus from day one when you were going into M++, or did that arise as you were looking at new ways of like making the levels fresh?
Really quick. So no, we weren't really at the very beginning. We weren't thinking about. Well, Raigan wasn't thinking about adding new things at all. I thought again it would be good to add a couple new things to just not gimmicky, things about novelty, but something that really made sense because we felt like there was a lot we could still do with this. It's a good base to add things to. Like you can do a lot in this world, and so that was one of the things that eventually we, as the project progressed, we were like. Oh yeah, okay, this could work. We started to have ideas that we refined and prototyped, and they started to work out. So.
Yeah, I'm pessimistic. So I was adamant. I was like, "There's no way we can add anything. It'll just feel stupid." But we actually finally did start prototyping stuff. And I mean, one of the main thing we focused on was that we knew because the multiplayer was just sort of this arbitrary thing. Microsoft was like, we mandate that all live arcade games have multiplayer, so you have to have multiplayer. So we added it, and it did work, but. Because it's a single player game, it felt like you felt so disconnected. So for all the new stuff we added, we tried to find designs that let the players interact indirectly via all the new enemies. So like the death balls are there like a new enemy that just moves towards the closest player, and all the other enemies lock on to the first person they see. But since this one is the closest, you can peel them off of each other in co-op, or send them at each other kind of in competitive. And there's a shove thwomp, which is maybe not a great name, but it's like a block where when you touch it and then move away, it shoots down in the opposite direction. And so that was sort of, we wanted a falling block object, because that's sort of a platformer trope we knew we didn't have and that we could use in level design. But we were like, how could we turn it into something that lets people interact more? So okay, if we make it sort of this enemy when it's in motion, then it's kind of like a gun. It's sort of like an attack kind of thing. So we really were trying to. And that's why you can hold toggles for each other and stuff, which we use a lot in co-op. Just so we didn't, when we started, we absolutely had no intention of adding new stuff, but we also did have the intention of at least trying, just on the off chance. And then as we did that, we were like, oh man, yeah, it's actually, and I mean, toggle mines are something that, when Silverbirch was making the DS and PSP one, they added a bunch of new stuff that we weren't really fans of. And one of the things was this timed mine, where you touch it and then 3 seconds later it blows up. And we kept telling them no, the game, it should be driven by the player's position. Just make it so that it's safe until you move. We told them to make a toggle mine, but they just wouldn't listen to us. So this time we're like, hey, fuck you guys. We're gonna do it. And it turns out it's sort of one of my favorite things that I think it really opened up the level design. Yeah. And it seems so obvious. A lot of people, we've seen a lot of streams where people attribute they're like, oh, I love this in N+, this is my favorite enemy in N+, but it's a new enemy that never was an enemy. So I feel all right, we actually did a good job of making it so that it did fit. It's not just a gimmick.
So is it fair to say that in terms of the physics, mechanics of N, that stayed relatively constant over N? And it sounds like more of the motivation for N++ was more just would you two primarily call yourself level designers, or you think of yourself, because it sounds like you spent a lot of your time in N++ doing level design, right? Is that kind of what motivated N++, or it's
well, so making levels is a fun thing that we kind of do because it's enjoyable, but that wasn't really the reason that we wanted to make N++. We really just wanted to make it to nail the aesthetics and to nail the whole package. We thought we could make it feel more like a really special experience. We could do the menus right, and we could make everything super responsive and very smooth, and just feel exactly the way that we want it to and look the way that we wanted it to. And so, yeah, it wasn't really, we are level designers, but I think we definitely have thought a lot about the game design too, and they're obviously very interrelated, but it was mostly about just trying to make that perfect package, because we're never making another game in this series, so we just wanted it to be, the exciting and interesting thing that is also very polished.
So is there a way that you guys would like? I know, you talked to me at least. You're like, it seems like you're sort of a lot happier with the more recent levels you've made. Like you feel like you became much stronger designers over the years. And in end, what does that mean to you? Like, what were you trying to quantify? Like, generally, why would you say your levels are better than they were in the plus? Is there like an overriding?
I think it's just learning. Like honestly, because we never like made levels for a game before we made it. So when you look like for the there's a set of levels in N++ that are like our favorites from the old one, but it's very few of them are from the original N. It's mostly from N+, because so many of the N levels are just awkward. It's like we didn't understand what to do and what not to do, just like in general level design terms, but as well as specifically what works for this game or not. And actually when we released them, every time we did an update, we released a new column. So if you play the original, and you can actually see column by column you can see the style kind of, like the first column is just super rough. It's all wild. Some of them are not fun at all. They're just so hard and awkward.
You can play them here later, right?
Yes. I don't actually know if this is like version 1.4 or version 2.0 or whatever, but like it's just like, I think if anyone did something over 10 years, they would learn and get better at it. And like for us, it was really like, we felt like finally we're confident that we can do a good job. And like even N+, everyone loves N+, but we really feel like the level design, I mean, we knew we could do better because we made like 1,000 levels in 3 months. Because it was just this, not on purpose. We were only supposed to make 300 levels, but then the people doing the DS and PSP versions didn't know how to make levels. And it was this whole mess where we just were like, okay, fuck it, we'll just do it.
Wasn't it like conventional wisdom that if you do something for like 1,000 hours, you're an expert? So you guys are like master class 10,000. Okay. Well, even so, you guys are like master class level designers.
I think we've almost made 10,000 levels total. So, yeah, it's near. I mean,
this is a lame question, but do you have a favorite level out of those 10,000? And which game is it in?
It's for sure in N++. I can't remember a specific favorite, honestly. I mean, actually, I have my favorite Evil Ninja level is called Brain Dance. It's like in the second from last expert, and it's just,
In N++?
Yeah, in N++, and it's just basically when we made the Evil Ninjas, we were just trying to find like, okay, here's an easy. We were trying to like test the limits, and it's like the very limit of what, because it's just you have to snake through it, and you have to do all this stuff. And it's really, like, we've only beaten it once, because it's, like, super pushes you to the limits of, I don't think we can pick, I can't pick a favorite.
That's a lame question. I'm curious if there was, like, a go-to one. Going back to, like, the 10-year over the cycle, I'd say I'm curious to sort of hear your take on what you feel N++ now, what the series represents in games, indie games in general. Because I'd say at the time, like, N+ to me was, like, minimalist platformer. The aesthetic was very, like, I liked it, but it was functional, whereas now I feel like it's very more like stylish and modern. But it's like, what does the game sort of mean to you? Like, where does it fit in everything? It's a very big question.
I don't really know. I mean, we sort of think it's about perfection. Like, I mean, it's like we, not on purpose, but in hindsight we realized that like the playing the game and the making the game, there's a lot of similarities, and like it's not about perfection in a good way necessarily. It's about like perfection is unattainable, and you can go crazy trying to get to perfection. So you have to find a point that's good enough where you can still feel good about yourself, even though you know it's never going to be perfect. In terms of indie games, I don't know. Like honestly, before we released N++, when it was done, we were like, it's because it ended up way bad. We did not expect that it would be as good as it. We were super happy with it. And it's good because the whole point was we're never making another one. And this meant we were confident we would never have to, and we couldn't top it anyways. Like, not that it's perfect, obviously, but it's like the best thing like this that we can do. And so we were like, okay, finally, the hegemony of Meat Boy has been broken, and we will reattain the throne, and people will realize that it's nice to have this complicated nuance and not have damsels and fart jokes, and you know, like we thought it would be like, okay, good, but it turns out that it's not looking like that's the case. But I feel like we still have influenced people in some way. Honestly, I think our main influence with N is like the Ramones influence, where it's like they toured around England and the U.S. and everywhere they played, people started bands. Because when you see the Ramones play, you're like, I could do that. And when you play N and you meet us, you're like, well, if those two jokers can make a game, then I can too. You know, because you really can. Like anyone can make a game. It's not hard. So I think that like, to me, I mean, not to compare ourselves to the Ramones, because obviously we don't really have that kind of cultural cachet, but I don't, also a New York crowd, so no offense. But I mean, I think that that's like the main thing that I have, because people have told us that we inspired them, and I think that that's the main inspiration is like, you can make something, I mean, that's how, like, we only made N because we were inspired by all the freeware we were playing.
Have there been inspirations between N+ and N++ along the way that have influenced your level design? So there's like other games that really help inform what N has become now between iterations?
Honestly, it goes, oh yeah, it's Splunky. Maybe not so much. I think like really Wipeout 3 is still the main thing. I mean, even the original N was like we were hardcore to Wipeout 3 before then. So I think that was like our main inspiration in terms of the UI and the aesthetics in general.
Yeah.
Do you want to go, or should I?
Oh, go ahead.
Well, so, I mean, thinking about this, like, 11 years, indie games, where does N series and all this? It feels kind of like germane that you guys are from Toronto. Like, in terms of these kind of, like, indies who've been doing this for a while. I think about you guys and Cappy and Jonathan Mack. Like, it seems like maybe more than other cities, there is this kind of group of you who've been doing this kind of longer than many of us, at least, you know, myself. I kind of only really got into this in like 2008 or something. Do you feel that way? Like, do you feel like that this is really a product of Toronto, or that you've influenced Toronto, or do you kind of not see it in those kinds of like narrative terms?
It's hard to say because like I always lived in Toronto, so I don't have a great perspective. I think we both grew up in the suburbs and we live in Toronto, so I don't know that we have a great perspective. For sure, being in Toronto, we never would have made it. Like maybe we met John Mack when we were all at University of Toronto, and luckily I'm not a great student, so because he's a couple years younger than us, so I was in the same computer science class as him. Because he was like maybe a year advanced, and I was like a year behind. And meeting him was like, we didn't know anyone that made games. We were just playing like Home of the Underdogs we'd found. And so we were just playing tons of freeware and abandonware and getting really inspired. And when we met him, that was what, like he inspired us to make games because he had made dozens of games through high school. And so when we met him, he was showing us, like, we were like, holy shit, like, you can just make a game. Like one person can just make a game, which we knew because we were playing all this freeware, but it was really palpable when you meet someone and you can, especially talking with him. So it's so great, like we'd go out for lunch and we could ask him, hey, like, so how do you do this? Or have you ever had to do this sort of thing? And I think that for sure, it was a huge influence on us.
Jonathan Mack, famous for Everyday Shooter and then more recently Sound Shapes, which is also on PlayStation.
Yeah, and I mean, Cappy really inspired us to like get better at what we do, especially in terms of like polish and like their marketing, their videos and stuff. It's like, it's just like real, you know, it's like legitimate. It's like, it's not like good for indie or whatever, it's just good, you know? It's like what they do is just good. And that I think was a huge, like it really pushed us. We kind of felt kind of inadequate and like, okay, they've set this bar and we're gonna really try to jump over it kind of thing. But I think that, I don't know, like, I really like Toronto for that. Just that there are a lot of people making games. But even before that, like, really just, it was just meeting John was the main thing that got us into it.
Do you have any should we start taking stuff from the audience? Or? I mean, I have a million questions I could ask, but maybe we should open up to the audience and then we can also play. Does anyone just yell them out? Yeah.
So it was a while since I played games, but one thing you didn't touch on is like when you made it for the Xbox, you started like you switched from keyboard to lower. Maybe there's something there that's
Yes.
interesting about the design.
Actually, that's a good. That's an amazing question. So it's just like, it really it's the D-pad on the 360 controller is totally unusable.
Yes.
So you had to use the stick, and there's that throw, and it's so twitchy. It was designed for keyboard where you could instantly change directions. So we, honestly, all we did was we made the levels easier. We had to keep making the levels easier to compensate, and as a result, all of our hardcore fans weren't super happy with N+, because, I mean, I can play through the whole game in like 4 hours because it's so easy, but, I mean, that probably also helped it be more popular for people that were new to the series. But yeah, that for sure, the stick, the throw of the stick. And I mean, what really sucks is when you're watching streams of N++ and you can hear this click-clack of the stick being thrown, and you're like, no, please use the D-pad. There's a good D-pad on the controller now. It's like, for sure, we think it works best with the D-pad.
What's the input thing where you can see left, right, input?
That's
Replay. Down. But so there's
show replay inputs. One down. Yeah.
On the show then.
Yeah.
That's, you can see it live, right? Not
No, I think it's only in replays.
That's it, okay.
Oh shit.
I don't know if you can see the replays.
I don't think you can see them all.
Sorry. Yeah.
Damn it.
So this is another where you can see as someone's playing, you can see the live input, some little arrows next to it, so you can rephrase.
But there's no analog.
No, yeah, sorry. No, it's still completely discrete. There's like a dead zone, because I mean, it was designed like there is a lot of analog feel, but it's just because you're accumulating acceleration. So it's like baked into the physics model rather than the controls.
Any other questions?
Does the number weighing option in the menu do anything?
Yes, totally does.
Yeah.
That's it.
Can you guys talk?
Experiment.
Can you talk a little about the nature of the secrets in the game? Only because Doug doesn't know, and I was going to explain it to him earlier today, and we didn't get around to it. So I'd love for him and everybody to know like what. I mean, it's out there a lot now. Like you guys have been reading a lot of streamers and such, but like.
Yeah, I think we can probably talk a bit about
Yeah.
it. So there are secret challenges in every single N++ main solo level. So, and they're all kind of hidden in plain sight in the level. So there are secret tasks for you to do in each level, like little goals for you to attain. And there are secret codes that tell you about what those tasks are, but they're only revealed after you've beaten the game and gotten a lot of all gold badges. So it's pretty hard to get to that point. But the secret challenges are things like get all of the toggle mines without getting any of the gold, which I think is what Raigan's trying to do now.
trying to do it.
It's very difficult. But yeah, we kind of got a bit bored while we were editing and designing levels, and we started thinking about things like, I wonder if I could get, all the toggle mines in this level and still survive. Or I wonder if I can get no gold and
So we hit some toggles up here.
yeah, so some things are hidden, and sometimes you could just barely squeeze through little places that you delete. But yeah, all the secrets are hidden in there, and it's not things we normally do. So we sort of subvert all of our design rules and subvert the player's expectations. So while you're playing, you might just notice something weird and think about it, and then eventually it will kind of all come together and make sense. So that's the secret challenges, but then there's also secret levels, which you unlock after you beat enough secret challenges successfully. And those are like remixed levels that are like taken to extremes. So they're not really minimal anymore, and they're, really kind of amped up versions of these levels. And they often require really tricky things to beat them. And we just kind of had fun with it. We were like, it became sort of a puzzle for us, and something that we found enjoyable, even though we've been playing this game for like 11 years, for this, the core of this game. So it was a way for us to really get back to it.
The exit changes color to signal that you got a secret.
Yeah.
I think I've accidentally done that.
Yes, yeah, it will remember. They're not revealed until you've beaten the game and got a bunch of gold, but it always remembers what you've done, so it still counts. You don't have to ever do it twice or whatever. It'll be unlocked when you reveal them.
Any other final questions?
I have one.
Yeah, we'll do one more question. Yeah.
Okay, so kind of a silly question, but like, what's the biggest dispute dispute you had over like gameplay system during all this year? Has there been any fight?
The question was, what's the biggest dispute they've had over that kind of gameplay system over the years?
I think well, the biggest dispute is my insistence on coming up with stupid level names, like two that I can think of off the top of my head, because I know that they're ones that Mare still is horrified by, is Lacuna Matata and Hakuna Metadata. I don't know why, but I find that hilarious, but it horrifies. It's sort of like a joke of like, when we make new levels and we're testing them, it's the first time Mare's seen it, so it's like, I really like that reaction of like, oh god, really? And like, but I mean, oh yeah, I think the Evil Ninja was one where it's just like, Mare really wanted an Evil Ninja for years, and I was, like, I'm just so pessimistic and conservative, and I'm always like, no, it's not gonna work, it's stupid, But then, like, inevitably what happens is we actually try it, and then it's amazing, and then I feel like an idiot.
Cool, yeah, why don't we quit yapping? No, thank you for the conversation. That was good to hear.
Yeah.
Well, why don't we do an informal race tournament
Totally.
in the official race mode. Our local New York buddy Josh is in the audience, who has commentated M++ before. I said he would kind of help out and commentate. So I guess just come up to me and Mare and Raigan to kind of sign up, and we'll figure out an exact format.
Do you want me to like quickly run through?
Yeah,
how race
actually,
works?
please.
Okay, awesome. Also, the winner of each round gets a T-shirt. So come.
Or some other prize.
Or another prize if you want. We have various
That's
things. So the way that race works is there's infinite respawning. So it's like normally in the game when you die, that's it. So the way the race works is everyone starts. I should start again actually from the beginning. So. Each match is a set of 5 levels, and the winner is whoever has the highest score at the end of the 5 levels. And you start each level with a certain amount of bonus, which is like potential score. And what you're trying to do is reach the exit alive, and then you cash that bonus in for permanent score. And that's what's counted at the end of the match. And by collecting gold during the level, you can increase that bonus to get a better score. But if you don't make it to the exit alive, you get nothing. So you really have to prioritize making it to the exit. Once one person hits the exit, sudden death mode begins, and there's no more respawning, so it's everyone else's last chance. And also, once someone has hit the exit and it's in sudden death, everyone's score decays. So at that point, it really pays to just bolt for the exit. And finally, when you touch the exit, a rocket appears that's the same color as your ninja, and you can steer it clockwise and counterclockwise with left and right and try to kill one of the other players. That's the key. The key to comebacks is, because by killing someone, you're denying them, they get 0 score for that level. So that's clutch, but it's even harder to control the rocket than to control the ninja. A couple other things are, if no one has beaten the level in a certain amount of time, we should probably reduce that to like 1 minute. It turns on You Suck mode, and with You Suck mode, every second we'll delete an enemy to make the level easier, and then as soon as one person touches the exit, everyone else explodes. I think that's about it.
Rocket.
Oh!
Yeah.
Cool. So we're open till 11. We'll also be milling about if you want to ask some more questions. You guys are doing drinks in the back. Awesome. Yeah. Thank you, Babycastles, by the way.
Thanks very much.
A real stalwart institution of the New York scene here. So it's fun to show Mare and Raigan Babycastles. Yeah. Thank you so much for hosting. You can try the versions over the ages in the arcade machines and over here to kind of get a feeling. Cool, yeah, thanks everyone. And yeah, just come up if you want to do race.
I think we should all thank Doug and Nick for being here and putting this on.
The mic's down in the Bible. I guess I'll go into the crowd. Should we put the sound effects on?
Damn.
Yeah, and then you don't know.
He got it! I see it. No! I think he's trying very hard. I didn't. Oh, never mind. I'm sorry.
And we had it running like in 2012.
Joking. No!
Yeah. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
Good to meet all of you. Good to see you guys again.
Yes, of course. It's like, where are we?
I was worried. I didn't get to enjoy any kid until